It was supposed to be just another backyard barbecue. Sweaty beers, kids running wild, and too many conversations about lawn care. I remember the smell of grilled ribs clinging to the air, the sound of summer country music in the background, and that perfect golden hour sun dipping below the neighbor's roof. But that day, that joke, split my life in two like a busted seam. My name's Tyler Brooks. I was 35, married to Rachel, my wife of 8 years, a woman I thought I knew down to her freckles. Rachel was that typical high school sweetheart turned grown-up beauty. Sharp jawline, sarcastic charm, and a smile that could butter up a rattlesnake. But underneath that, well, I hadn't seen the rot yet. Not then. Not until her sister opened her mouth. We were standing around the picnic table. Rachel's dad was flipping burgers, her mom chugging Chardonnay from a solo cup. I was on my second beer, just chewing on a hot dog like it was any other Saturday. Then bam, out of nowhere, Lindsay, Rachel's younger sister, the one with a taste for tequila and too loud opinions, looked at me and laughed. "If your wife cheats on you, will you cry?" It hung in the air. Everyone chuckled like it was just some dumb family tease. Everyone except me. I smiled politely, gave a little shrug. But then Rachel, my lovely wife, cocked her head and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "He doesn't last in bed anyway." Silence. Even the damn wind paused. Lindsay laughed harder, like it was the punchline of the century. Rachel didn't even blink. No apology. No, just kidding. Just that smug little smirk like she'd said something clever instead of cruel. Like I was some pathetic joke to her. I sat there, gripping my hot dog like it was an anchor keeping me from floating off into disbelief. And all I could manage was, "Message received." That was it. No drama. No screaming. Just those 2 words. Then I stood up, walked to the cooler, grabbed one last beer, and left. I didn't wait for dessert. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't even say goodbye. I drove straight to a cheap motel by the interstate, sat on a stiff mattress staring at the wall, and replayed her voice over and over in my head. "He doesn't last in bed anyway." How many times had she said that? To whom? Had she laughed about me with others before? It wasn't just the comment. It was the way she said it, casually like swatting a fly, with no love, no fear, no care. At that moment, I knew something was off. More than off. Something was rotten. Something I hadn't dared admit before. That night, I did what I should have done long ago. I logged out of our shared Netflix, disabled the GPS tracking on our phones, and tossed my wedding ring into the motel sink. I vanished. I cut contact, no texts, no calls, no explanations. I didn't owe her that. Not anymore. The funny thing is, when a man disappears, people don't come running right away. Especially when you've been the quiet, stable type your whole life. People assume you're just cooling off. But me? I wasn't cooling off. I was burning. Quietly. Completely. From the inside out. And so began my exile. I didn't know the full story yet. Didn't know who or how many. But I knew there was more behind that smirk. You don't joke like that unless you've crossed the line, not just thought about it. And the way her eyes avoided mine that night, how she reached for her phone right after the joke. Not me. I knew it. Rachel wasn't just cruel. Rachel was guilty. I stayed off the grid. No social media. Rerouted my mail to a P.O. box in another state. Took freelance gigs under a pseudonym. For the first time in my adult life, I breathed alone. I cried twice, maybe 3 times in total. Not because of what she said, but because I realized something worse. I had loved someone who stopped loving me a long time ago, and I hadn't even noticed. They say betrayal stings most when it's slow, when you don't see it coming until the knife is already inside. And let me tell you something, it was already halfway in. And Rachel, she was already gone. I just hadn't caught her in the act yet. But I would. And when I did, she'd wish she'd only made that joke. The first real clue came 2 weeks after I disappeared. I was staying in a cheap rental cabin deep in the Tennessee woods. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just the sound of cicadas and my thoughts. My phone buzzed once every couple of days with a message from friends or Rachel's family. I never replied. I didn't want their concern. I didn't want to explain something I barely understood myself. I wanted the truth. And it came, stupidly enough, from an old iPad I'd forgotten was still linked to our shared cloud. I was scrolling through downloaded PDFs when it happened. A photo popped up in the shared album, some automatic sync thing from her phone to our joint account. At first glance, it was innocent. Just Rachel sitting on a hotel bed, a big mirror behind her, her hair wet like she'd just come out of the shower. No caption. But then I saw it, the reflection. In the mirror behind her was a man, tall, shirtless, holding a towel and grinning like he knew exactly what was happening. Like this was routine, not a mistake, not a one-time thing. Routine. My heart didn't pound. It didn't shatter. It just froze. That picture was dated 2 days before the barbecue. While I was out running errands, fixing the backyard lights for her family's gathering, she was in a hotel with someone else, and then had the audacity to mock me in front of her entire family like nothing was wrong. I zoomed in on the guy's reflection. Couldn't see his full face, but there was something familiar. Maybe from one of her coworkers' social media pages? Or someone from her gym. I didn't know. Not yet. I sat back on the cabin's cold wooden floor, staring at that photo until the iPad went black from inactivity. My throat was dry. My chest felt like a locked box someone had buried in cement. Not because she cheated, I think deep down I already knew, but because of the way she did it. Carelessly, boldly, like she thought I'd never find out, or worse, like she didn't care if I did. I remembered how she'd been pulling away over the last few months. The sudden interest in late yoga, when she'd never cared for stretching in her life, the cold shoulder in bed, the way she'd dress up to go grab coffee with the girls, and come back wearing someone else's cologne. I saw it all now. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in small things. A laugh at your expense, a mirror reflection, a forgotten iPad. I thought about texting her, about sending the photo with one word, nice, but I didn't. Not yet. She didn't know I had proof. Let her keep lying a little longer. Let her dig her hole deeper. I spent the next few hours scrolling through the shared album, finding more little hints, cropped screenshots of text threads, blurry dinner pics with 2 glasses of wine, one photo where her wedding ring was missing. Piece by piece, she was unraveling. And now I wasn't just a man betrayed. I was a man on a mission. Not for revenge. No, I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted the whole truth. And I was going to get it. 3 weeks after the barbecue, I walked back into my old life. Not to stay, just to shake it up. The photo had been haunting me. Her smirk, his reflection, that smug grin. I needed to look her in the eye and watch her lie. Not text, not call. Face to face. So I drove back to Nashville, parked 3 blocks from the house we used to share. Still had a key, still remembered every creak in the floorboards. But I didn't need it. She was home. Her car sat out front, pristine as ever, while mine, once parked beside it, was now just a ghost in her driveway. I rang the doorbell. A moment later, she opened the door. Barefoot, no makeup, holding a mug of tea like this was just any other Tuesday. Her eyes widened, not in fear, not in guilt, just annoyance. "Tyler," she said flatly, "so you're alive. Not where have you been. Not I was worried. Just that." I stepped inside without asking. She didn't stop me. "You got 5 minutes," I said. She shrugged, walked to the couch, and plopped down like I was a solicitor selling something she didn't want. The disrespect rolled off her like perfume. "You cheating?" I asked, standing in the middle of the living room we used to call ours. She raised a brow. "That's why you ghosted?" I stared at her, silent. "God, you're dramatic." She laughed. "It was just a joke at the barbecue. Grow up, Tyler." I didn't move. Then I pulled out the iPad, opened the photo, turned it around and showed her. For a second, just a second, her face cracked. A flicker of panic. Then it hardened. "Are you stalking me now?" she snapped. "You disappear, abandon me, and then what? Spy on my phone? Pathetic." I stayed silent. She stood up, rolled her eyes, walked to the kitchen, and poured herself another drink. "Yeah, I slept with someone else," she said. Like she was telling me we were out of milk. Maybe more than once. You weren't exactly giving me fireworks, Tyler. I got bored. My chest didn't explode. My fist didn't clench. I just absorbed it. She said it so easily. No guilt. No shame. Just the casual venom of someone who'd long stopped seeing me as a person. How long? She shrugged. Few months. Give or take. Who? She smirked. Does it matter? What, you gonna go fight him? Please. That was the moment it really hit me. This wasn't a woman who made a mistake. This was a woman who chose betrayal and wore it like armor. She walked closer, sipping her drink, staring at me with eyes so empty it scared me. You weren't a man anymore, Tyler, she said. You were a checklist. House, stability, dinner, boring. The man I met back then? He vanished years ago. So yeah, I moved on. While still married, I said. She smiled. Details. I took one last look at her. The woman I thought I'd build a future with was gone. Replaced by a hollow, bitter thing that looked like her, but wasn't her. I'll have my lawyer contact you, I said, turning toward the door. Good. Maybe he'll last longer than you did. I stopped but didn't turn around. She laughed to herself, like she'd won. But she didn't know that this cold little performance was the best thing she could have done for me. She killed the last ounce of doubt. She freed me. I walked out, closed the door, and let the past rot behind me. You ever feel like silence is louder than any scream? That's what the days after the confrontation felt like. No more doubts. No more what-ifs. Just the dead quiet that follows after a bomb's gone off and there's nothing left but smoke and scorched earth. I drove straight from our house, no, her house now, to the motel I'd been staying at. Sat in the car for an hour, engine off, staring at nothing. Everything felt numb. Not in that peaceful way. In that cold, hollow, am I even alive? Way. My hands were steady. My mind wasn't racing. It was worse than anger, it was clarity. She'd said it to my face. You weren't a man anymore. You were a checklist. So yeah, I moved on. Rachel was right about one thing. The man she married wasn't there anymore. But not because I faded. No, it was because she starved him out. Fed him lies, fed him silence, pulled love away inch by inch until there was just a shell trying to keep everything together. And now, that shell was cracking open. The first thing I did was call a divorce attorney the next morning. A clean-cut guy named Jordan Miller. He didn't ask many questions. He heard the words infidelity, photo proof, and no kids. And he nodded like he'd seen it 1,000 times. Probably had. We'll make it clean, he said. If she fights, we have leverage. If she doesn't, you're free in 6 months. I liked that word. Free. I didn't reach out to her again. I didn't need to. Let her sip wine and tell her friends how Tyler ran away. Let her play the victim. I wasn't playing anymore. A few days later, Lindsay, the sister who made the original cheating joke at the barbecue, texted me. I didn't expect it. Lindsay, heard what happened. Sorry. Didn't know it was real. I didn't reply at first. Then 2 days later, she sent another one. Lindsay, Rachel's been bragging about it. Says she's glad you're gone. Says she's leveling up. She's a mess, man. You don't deserve that. That one hurt more than it should have. Not the content. Just the fact that this was who Rachel really was. Bragging about destroying what we had. Acting like she'd traded in a used car and walked off the lot grinning? But that was her. Always performing for an audience. I went dark again after that. I shut off the iPad, changed my number, finished packing up the cabin. I even drove upstate and stayed in a friend's vacant lake house for a while, just to breathe somewhere untouched by her. No mirrors, no memories, but even in the silence, the fallout came in waves. Little things would set me off. Commercial about wedding rings. A couple walking hand in hand down the lake trail. An old playlist on shuffle landing on our song, the one she once danced to in the kitchen in her pajamas. God, I remembered that night like it was yesterday. And now it felt like a scene from someone else's life. Like I was just a bystander who once watched love happen, but never truly had it. But with every wave, I learned something. She didn't break me. She revealed me. There was a man inside me who'd been begging to stop compromising. Begging to stop excusing disrespect. A man who'd been warning me with every cold shoulder, every half-truth, every damn girl's night. That didn't add up. I just didn't listen. Until now. And now? I was listening to everything. I wasn't planning to find him. I didn't think I needed to. But fate, or maybe spite, had other ideas. I was in a diner 2 towns over, halfway through a greasy plate of eggs and toast, when it happened. The waitress was young, chatty, said her name was Kelsey. The IE part important. She noticed the iPad I'd finally turned back on to check emails and make sure the lawyer's forms had come through. The screen was still open on the photo, the one with Rachel on the hotel bed. Mirror behind her, the mystery man grinning like he'd just won a prize. Kelsey leaned over as she refilled my coffee. Her eyes flicked to the screen. "Ha, is that Mark?" she asked. I froze. My heart didn't pound, just sank. "Who?" I asked too calmly. She leaned in again. "Mark Dillard, personal trainer over at Brickhouse Fitness. That looks like him. I used to date his cousin." She looked at me, then back at the screen. "Yeah, that's totally Mark. Same tattoo on the shoulder." Tattoo. I hadn't even noticed. I closed the iPad slowly. "You sure?" She nodded. "Yeah, he's kind of a tool. Got fired once for messing with a client's wife." She paused. "Wait, is that your wife?" I didn't answer, just dropped a 20 on the table and walked out, coffee still steaming behind me. That name stuck in my head the whole drive back. Mark Dillard. Personal trainer. Of course. Rachel had only started working out this past year. Said she was finally taking her body seriously. Said it was about health. Said she was tired of feeling invisible. Turns out she wasn't invisible. She just needed someone who looked at her like a trophy, not a partner. I found his gym profile online. Sleazy smile, overuse of emojis, a bio that used the word grind 5 times. I could practically hear his voice in my head. Fake deep, motivational, dripping in brologic. He looked young, maybe 30, shiny white teeth, arms like he slept in the weight room. I could see the appeal if you were trying to recapture your 20s in the most cliché way possible. But I wasn't angry at him. Not really. That would have been too easy. He didn't know me anything. She did. Still, I wanted to see him. Just once. Not to fight. Not to make a scene. Just to look into the eyes of the guy who helped burn down my life. So I waited. 2 days later, I parked across the street from the gym. Watched through tinted windows as he finished a session with some exhausted guy in his 50s. When the coast was clear, I walked inside. The air smelled like sweat and ambition. Music thumped in the background. And there he was, wiping his neck with a towel, smiling like the world belonged to him. "Mark?" I asked. He looked up, brows raising. "Yeah." I didn't smile. "You sleep with married women often? Or was my wife just a special case?" He blinked, then laughed. A short, nervous bark. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married, all right?" I didn't believe him. He said it too quickly, too defensively. "She's still married, actually." I stared him down. "Still wearing the ring some days. Just not around you, I guess." His jaw tightened. "Look, I didn't mean any disrespect. I didn't know she had a husband who'd show up." That last part told me everything I needed to know. He knew. Maybe not right away. But eventually, yeah, he knew. I leaned in. "You can keep her." He blinked. "What?" "You heard me. She's yours. Good luck." Then I walked out. No fists. No shouting. Just silence. And in that silence, for the first time, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it didn't control me anymore. You'd think after everything. The smirk at the barbecue, the photo in the mirror, the trainer named Mark. I'd be done. Wrapped up. Closure achieved. But life doesn't tie itself into neat little bows when betrayal's involved. No, there's always something left. A breath that catches wrong. A word that stings days later. A door half shut that still creaks when the wind moves. For me, that creak came a week after I saw Mark. It started with a voicemail. I hadn't heard her voice since the confrontation. I didn't expect to, but there it was. Short, sharp, unapologetic. "Tyler, I know you talked to him. I don't know what game you're playing, but don't ruin my life just because you couldn't handle the truth. We're adults. Move on." She said it like she was graciously letting me off the hook. Like I was the crazy one for showing up. No apology. No guilt. Just entitlement wrapped in passive aggression. The same tone she used the night she mocked me in front of her family. Like pain was beneath her. I didn't call back. Didn't respond. But something in that message sat wrong in my chest. I didn't want revenge. But I wanted her to know she hadn't broken me. That she hadn't turned me into some bitter shadow of myself. I wanted her to see that I was done being the quiet, loyal idiot who held the walls up while she dug escape tunnels underneath our marriage. So I did something petty. Not cruel. Just honest. I mailed her the wedding ring. But not just in a box. I taped it to a printed screenshot of the hotel photo. The one with Mark smiling in the mirror. Underneath, I wrote 5 words in Sharpie. "Here's what you threw away." No signature. No threats. Just clarity. Cold and clean. I don't know what her reaction was. She never called. Never texted. But I like to think it shook her. Not because she still cared, but because it reminded her she got caught and I walked away standing. A few days later, my lawyer called. Rachel had finally responded to the divorce filing. She didn't fight it. No demands. No property battles. No drawn-out war. Just a signature and a note through her lawyer saying she wanted a peaceful resolution. Of course she did. She wanted her hands clean. But I was okay with that. I didn't need her mess spilling further into my life. I had a future to reclaim. A new silence to fill. One of peace, not avoidance. I moved out of state 2 weeks later. Found a small apartment with big windows and no memories. Started working out. Not for revenge, not for transformation. Just to feel strong again. Rebuilt my freelance business under my own name. Even started hiking, something Rachel always hated. Funny how freedom comes in layers. First, it feels like a loss. Then it starts tasting like air. One day, I ran into Lindsay again. At a bookstore of all places. She looked surprised, maybe a little guilty. "You look good," she said. "I feel good," I replied. She hesitated. For what it's worth, she's not happy. She pretends. But I cut her off gently. Doesn't matter. Not my circus anymore. And it didn't. Because closure, I realized, isn't something you get from them. It's what happens when you stop needing it. I left the bookstore with a smile. Didn't look back. People think healing is like waking up one day and everything's fine. That the clouds part, the pain fades, and suddenly you're laughing again. But healing doesn't arrive like a sunrise. It comes like a slow, uneven storm. You don't realize it's past until the silence isn't heavy anymore. I didn't become a better man overnight. I didn't hit the gym one morning and come out of it some chiseled revenge fantasy. I didn't meet a new woman who magically erased Rachel from my mind. That's not how it works. You bleed first, then you rebuild, piece by piece. At first, I just learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. I'd forgotten how to enjoy my own company. Marriage, especially a hollow one, makes you mistake noise for connection. Rachel and I had stopped talking years ago, but there was always the sound of her footsteps, her keys on the counter, the background noise of someone present but absent. Now there was real silence, and it was terrifying until it became beautiful. I started doing little things I used to love, things I had put away to make space for her moods, her schedules, her cold silences. I played guitar again, badly at first. My fingers were stiff. The strings felt foreign. But eventually the songs came back, like old friends showing up when you least expected them. I cooked for myself. Real meals, not microwave dinners. There was something healing about standing over a stove, chopping onions, listening to jazz I never dared play around Rachel because she'd roll her eyes and say, "Are we 70 now?" I hiked every weekend. No GPS, just maps, boots, and the sound of my own breath. Out in the woods, I realized I didn't need her voice to drown out my thoughts. I wanted to hear them, I needed to. And somewhere in those hikes, in the creaks of mountain trails and the crunch of gravel under my feet, I started to meet myself again. Not the version of me who tiptoed around someone else's cold moods. Not the man who swallowed every insult because he thought being steady meant being silent. No, I found the guy who once believed in things. In loyalty, in laughter, in love that didn't feel like a chore. That guy hadn't died. He'd just been buried. And the more I dug, the more I found. A man with a spine, a sense of humor, and a soul that still wanted more out of life. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want Rachel to suffer. I wanted her to become invisible. And that's exactly what she became. Just a ghost in my memory. A smirk at a barbecue. A smudged reflection in a hotel mirror. A warning sign on the road I'd already left behind. One day I saw her name pop up in a mutual friend's tagged photo. Her eyes were the same, but something behind them looked off. Like she'd spent so long performing happiness, she forgot how to actually live it. I looked for 1 second, then scrolled away. No rage, no sadness, just a shrug and a deep breath. I was no longer haunted. I was whole. And I knew then, closure wasn't a finish line. It was a mirror. When you can look into it and see someone you respect again, yourself, that's when you've made it. Not back to who you were, but forward to who you were always supposed to be. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here, peaceful, steady, free, I'd have laughed in your face. Or maybe I wouldn't have laughed. Maybe I would have just stared blankly, too exhausted to believe in anything other than getting through the next day without collapsing. But here I am. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. A plain email from my lawyer. Signed. Done. Just like that. No fanfare. No fireworks. No final words from her. Rachel vanished the way she lived the last year of our marriage. Cold, indifferent, and already halfway out the door. I didn't celebrate. I didn't get drunk or throw a party. I just sat on my balcony, watched the sun set over a quiet skyline, and let the peace settle. And now I think it's time to speak to the others like me, the broken ones. The ones who've been betrayed, mocked, humiliated. The ones who walked into a relationship with love and came out carrying ashes and confusion. So here's my advice. 1. Don't rush to forgive. You'll hear people say forgiveness is for you, not them. That may be true eventually, but early on, forgiveness is a fantasy. What you need first is space. Space to breathe, to feel the anger, the sadness, the disbelief. Sit in it. Learn from it. You don't owe kindness to someone who spit on your loyalty. 2. Listen to your gut. If something feels off, it is. Don't gaslight yourself into staying quiet. If her behavior changes, her tone sharpens, her laughter at your expense becomes routine, it's not nothing. You're not paranoid. You're picking up on the unraveling. Speak, confront, or walk. Don't ignore the signs just because you're afraid of what they'll confirm. 3. Leave with dignity. You don't need to win the breakup. You don't need to burn her world down. Your absence, your silence, your refusal to chase or beg, that's louder than any revenge. When I walked out of that barbecue after her cruel joke, I gave up my place in her circus. And trust me, nothing ruins a performance like the audience walking out. For rebuild for you, not to prove a point, not to make her jealous, not to show her what she lost. Do it because you deserve a life untainted by her shadow. Heal in ways that make you feel alive, not just distracted. You don't want to become someone new. You want to return to the version of you that believed in love, loyalty, and self-worth before it got twisted. 5. Don't fear being alone. It's in solitude that the real work begins. You'll learn things about yourself that you never noticed while sharing a bed with someone who made you feel small. And one day, you'll wake up, make your coffee, and realize the silence in your home finally feels like peace, not punishment. Lastly, don't ever let anyone convince you that your worth is tied to how long you lasted in bed, how much money you made, or how well you played house. My wife tried to reduce me to a joke in front of her family, tried to humiliate me, and for a minute it worked. But then I stood up, quietly, walked away, and in doing so, I gave myself something she could never offer me. Freedom with my self-respect intact. To the man reading this, who just discovered the messages, or heard the cruel joke, or found the hotel receipt, know this: you're not broken. You're just bruised. And bruises fade. You will stand again. You will love again. And next time, you'll choose better. Because now, you know your worth.